where those requirements are kind of rolling out from. And those requirements, any requirements that are hitting employers really stem from the centerpiece of the Affordable Care Act, and that's this individual mandate. You'll see on your screen right now that beginning in 2014, the game-changing provision of the Affordable Care Act is the requirement for individuals to purchase health insurance or potentially pay a penalty at the end of the year when those individuals file their taxes. Now this is very important to emphasize. The mandate is not on employers to offer health insurance. Now, I'm sure everybody's heard that certain employers, specifically large employers with more than 50 full-time equivalent employees, may face a penalty if they don't offer health insurance. But again, there is no mandate for employers to offer insurance. Now, I realize that may sound somewhat like I'm splitting hairs a bit, but please understand that there is no requirement for employers to offer insurance. If you have less than 50 full-time employees, then there is no burden placed on you in terms of any potential obligation or any potential penalty.
Yeah,
now, if
Lou,
you have more than 50, yeah, is this Curtis?
Yeah, Lou, I have a quick question. So I've heard,
oh, absolutely.
I've heard that there's been quite a few businesses that are going to cut their employees down to minimum half time, which is less than 30 hours, so that they don't have to pay insurance, and that they'll have to do that. Otherwise, they'll have to pay insurance on that employee if they're a full-time employee. And in a dental office, most of our employees are full-time, working 40 hours a week, and for us to be able to provide them insurance or to have to cut their hours will be very difficult. Is that true? Is that going to be true?
You bet. You bring up a great point, Curtis, and I'm going to actually hit that in some more detail as we get a little further on about the impact to the employers. But just to kind of give you a short answer at this point, if a dental practice has more than 50 full-time equivalents and they don't offer health insurance, that dental office, number one, is not under any mandate or obligation to roll out health insurance to their people. However, if they fall into a category as a large employer where they're considered at risk to pay a penalty, that's another issue that we have to deal with. And as we move ahead in the presentation, I'm going to talk about who's classified as a large employer and what limitations there are surrounding that penalty and kind of how to get around it and whatnot. So if I could, to give you a detailed answer, can I delay that for about maybe 25 minutes or so?
Oh yeah, I just know that that's been a question that I've heard quite a bit, and something that's been in the media as far as having to cut employees, and I definitely want to try to avoid that as much as possible. And if we can answer that later, that's great.
That's a great question, but you're absolutely right. Larger companies, and mostly what we're seeing are larger national firms like Applebee's and Home Depot, and these big firms that are trying to minimize the impact of this financial penalty by managing the hours of their employees to reduce eligibility. But understand, for most dental practices, I would imagine most of you that are on this call right now have less than 50 full-time employees, and we'll talk about calculating this full-time employee number a little later on as well. And if you have less than 50 full-time employees, this is the Affordable Care Act in terms of any obligations to offer insurance or any potential of paying a penalty. It is just not there. So I would imagine for 99% of the dental practices that are participating in this call right now, you just need to know right from the start, you are not facing any adverse consequences for changing what you're doing right now if you're not offering health insurance. I think what you're going to find as we move through this presentation that you're just going to have more options to consider. If you're currently offering health insurance and you want to look at more affordable options, I think you're going to find some of those may be present for you. If you don't offer health insurance and you don't want to get in the business of offering your people health insurance, I think you're going to find that that's not going to be an issue for you to avoid that, and you're going to see some options for your individuals as well, for your individual employees. But let me start by just focusing on this mandate, because this is at the center of why everything is rolling out the way it is next year. So the law specifically states that individuals have to carry health insurance, or they could face a penalty at the end of the year. Now, the health insurance has to meet what we call minimum essential coverage. So it just has to, the health insurance that an individual purchases really has to meet certain minimum guidelines set by the federal government. But you'll find, as you look at health insurance that your employees currently carry today, chances are 95% of anything your current employees have with respect to health insurance, it's going to meet the requirement of this mandate rolling into next year. So I just point that out because there is no requirement for your people to change the health insurance they have right now. So if you have, whether you're offering, well, for example, if you look at this slide, if you have people who are covered under a government-sponsored program like Medicare, or maybe because of their finances they're on Medicaid CHIP, or TRICARE, they're covered through the VA. I mean, any of these programs will satisfy the mandate rolling into next year. If you currently offer employer-sponsored coverage, chances are the coverage you offer right now is going to meet the mandate in terms of minimum essential coverage rolling into next year. If you have employees that have an individual policy, if you have a group health plan and you've kept it grandfathered, if you on a high-risk pool, all these options that your people currently utilize to provide health insurance to their families, chances are, rolling into next year, those health insurance plans are going to meet the requirements. And so there is no requirement for your people to buy something different as they get into next year. However, there may be a number of motivating factors that you'll see as we move through this presentation which might incentivize your people to look at different health insurance options for their families. And of course, if they don't currently purchase health insurance, they'll want to consider some of these options for sure. And so if your individual employees don't purchase health insurance, they could be subject to a penalty at the end of the year when they file their taxes. Now, you'll notice highlighted in red here on the screen, the penalty is prorated on a monthly basis. Whenever we talk about penalties in this seminar, I usually kind of default to annual penalties, and I'll kind of talk penalties in terms of annual penalties. But please know that you may be partially compliant throughout the year, and so these penalties are definitely prorated depending on how well you did during the year. So let's say, for example, with my family, if we get into January 1st of 2014 and I just decide, you know what, I'm just not going to carry health insurance. When I get to the end of 2015 and I file my tax return, what kind of a penalty am I looking at? Now, you'll notice, I mean, just to cut to the chase, the penalty is not that significant, especially in the first few years beginning in 2014. So you'll notice that the penalty is either the greater of a percentage of your applicable household income or just a flat dollar amount. And maybe, Curtis, maybe you can mention real quick, applicable household income. Can you shed some light on perhaps how that's calculated for most families?
So are you saying the household income of the employees or of the dentists?
Of the employees, individual employees. What does that mean by applicable household income? You can probably explain that better than I can.
Oh, well, I'm not. I'll give a try. Basically, it is. Well, remind me from speaking with you in the past. It's what that? Taxable income. Just had somebody whisper in my ear. It's taxable income, and that's just on the individual, or is that on the whole household, like the husband and family members? Yeah, great
question. It would be on the whole household, but you're absolutely right. It would be taxable income. So one day, and again, I'm not a CPA, but once they adjust for, things like their deductions and whatnot, that would be whatever would be applicable in terms of their income, which would be subject to the penalty. So when you look at the penalty at the end of the year, when I get to the end of the year, and if I haven't carried health insurance, in 2014, I'm either going to pay 1% of my household income, or I'm going to pay a flat dollar amount of $95 up to 3 family members, so $285 total.
Now, Lou, you're breaking up a little bit. I thought it was just on my end, but we have somebody who's mentioned it's breaking up. Can you maybe adjust your microphone a little bit?
I'm breaking up?
Yeah, you were breaking
I might.
up. There
I
we go.
wonder if I should.
That
Can you
might,
hear me better now?
yeah, now I can hear you better.
Okay. Let me know, please. If people can't hear me, let me know. If I need to call in on a different line, I'll do that for sure.
Okay, will do.
So just keep me posted on that, Curtis, if people are having trouble hearing me. Okay, so in terms of the penalty,
So yeah, just real
I
quick,
don't pay
back to the household income. It was confirmed by a CPA who's right next to me saying that it is the taxable income of that whole household, whether that's your husband, your wife, whoever that is. It's the taxable income that you're receiving.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. So at the end of the year, I'm either 1% of my taxable income or I'm $95. Now, in 2015, that increases to 2% of taxable income or $325 per person up to 3 family members. And then beyond 2015, it's 2.5 times your applicable household income or it's a flat dollar amount of $695. That would be in the future. That flat dollar amount would be adjusted for inflation. So you can see, I mean, for example, if a family's household income applicable, the taxable income, let's say it's $40,000, 1% of that income next year is what, $400 as far as a penalty that could be paid as part of the tax return, or maybe $285 if their income is less. So you can see that, first of all, the amount of the penalty is fairly insignificant for the first few years that this provision of the Act goes into effect. It's also interesting to note that when you look at the enforcement authority given to the IRS, the way the law reads currently is the IRS has very little enforcement authority to make your individual employees pay the penalty. Now the IRS can demand it, and they can send you letters and whatnot, but they can't levy you, fine you. They can't take action against you. All the IRS really can do is withhold that unpaid penalty from a future tax refund. But the way the law reads currently is the IRS has very little teeth to make you pay the penalty. So as we look into next year and this mandate to carry health insurance, the individual mandate, I think the penalty will have little effect on the decisions that individuals make with respect to whether or not they're going to go out there and buy insurance. But I think it's important to look at the incentives given to individual families. Some of it's stick, some of it's carrot. This is kind of the stick, hey, buy insurance or you'll pay a penalty. But there are a number of significant changes going into effect beginning January 1st that I think will incentivize a lot of families to look heavily at buying health insurance. And so let me talk about this for just a few minutes. So currently, I'm in the state of Utah. Currently in Utah, health insurance, your ability to buy health insurance is dependent in large part upon the underlying health history of your family. Or for a company, your ability to buy health insurance is in large part dependent upon the underlying history of the employees of the company. And for most states across the country, those laws are very, very similar. Some of you might be in states that are already guaranteed issue, but most states across the country are not. And so beginning January of next year, health insurance becomes guaranteed issue across the board. I mean, if you think about it, if there's a requirement for individuals to buy health insurance, individuals have to be able to get health insurance. So everybody can get health insurance starting next year. So even if you're currently not in a guaranteed issue state, starting January of next year, that will change. Health history will no longer impact someone's ability to buy health insurance. But in addition to this idea of guaranteed issue, you'll notice in this second paragraph on the screen, we also do away with pre-existing conditions. This has been, a significant problem for many people over the years. Now, federal law currently limits how pre-existing conditions can be managed by insurance companies if you carried prior coverage for a certain amount of time. without an extended gap in coverage. You can't have waiting periods anyway. But for many people, they're buying health insurance for the first time. They're subject to waiting periods for existing health problems. This will go away starting January of next year. If you buy a health plan, whether it's an individual policy, group policy, whatever, you'll no longer have any kind of a waiting period for pre-existing conditions. So if you have to buy health insurance starting next year, you have to be able to get it. So health insurance across the board becomes guaranteed issue. But in addition, the way health insurance is priced, for most states, this is going to change dramatically. And this is very important for you as an employer, not just employees, but you as an employer to consider if you're currently offering group health insurance to your people. Most states in the nation right now base the small employer rates on the underlying health history of the group. And most states base the individual premiums on the underlying health history of the family. That will all change starting next year. Every state in this nation moves to what we call community rating, modified community rating. Community rating basically just provides you with a published price. Insurance companies across the country are in the process right now of filing their health plans and filing their rates with their Department of Insurance and with Health and Human Services. And within the next month or so, we will know exactly what health insurance premiums are going to look like in 2014. And so the question becomes, whether you're buying an individual policy or whether you're on a group health plan right now, what will be the impact to your family or to your company as we move from this current pricing model to this new community rating pricing model beginning next year? And the concern is, for many people, for many experts, is that this will cause rates to jump significantly. If you're in a state right now where health insurance premiums are a function of health history and insurability, when we move to community rating, there's a number of reasons why health insurance premiums could jump significantly. And let me just share a couple of thoughts with you. Number one is, for most insurance companies in a lot of states, this is kind of a new game in town. And so because of all the uncertainty, you've just got to think that these insurance companies are going to price their plans somewhat expensive to make sure they don't lose their shorts as they get into next year. It's kind of like, I don't know if many of you remember about a decade ago when qualified high-deductible health plans came on the scene, these HSA plans. If you remember, do you remember how expensive they were? I mean, these were new products on the marketplace, these HSA health products. And insurance companies didn't quite know how to price them. And if you remember, there was a huge disconnect between these high-deductible plans you were buying and what you were actually paying for them. They were just really expensive. And it took a few years before the insurance companies, I think, got some traction, and these prices kind of fell in line with, you know, what you were buying. The concern is we might see a lot of that here as well, especially when you consider, so think about this. The rates for 2014, insurance companies have to publish by basically this month. The rates for 2015, they have to publish by the summer of 2014. And the rates for 2016, they have to publish by the summer of 2015. Insurance companies aren't going to know how well 2014 did until they get most of the way through 2015, and they will already have published 3 years of community rates. And so as you just kind of look at that, it just tells me that there may be the propensity to rate these things kind of high. But time will tell. I mean, we're just guessing right now, but within a month, we're going to know exactly what 2014 rates are going to look like. It's important to mention, too, that when you look at the way the age brackets are managed on these health insurance plans, let me just give you Utah as an example. Utah right now, when you look at the different age brackets, when you look at the prices for health insurance plans, for example, a 20 to 24 age bracket versus a 25 to 29, and that goes all the way up to, 60 to 64 and above. Utah law limits the spread between the cheapest age bracket and the youngest age bracket and the oldest age bracket to a 5-to-1 spread. Now, it's probably a little bit different in your state, but this is probably a similar story. So right now, if the single rate for a 20 to 24-year-old is $200, somebody in their 60s couldn't be more than $1,000. So it's a 5-to-1 spread. Well, the Affordable Care Act compresses those rate tables for every state starting next year to a 3-to-1 spread. So the cheapest age bracket and the oldest age bracket, there can't be more than a 3-to-1 difference in the rate, so 200 versus 600 as opposed to 200 versus 1,000. The reason that's impactful is because what that's going to do for many states is cause your younger ages to increase significantly and your older ages to come down a little bit. So young, healthy, single people could see, the fear is we could see their rates increase significantly. So why am I telling you all this? Because if you're in a state right now that is transitioning from some sort of insurability model to this community rating starting January of next year, whether it's your company's health plan or you have individuals that are just carrying their own policies, you're going to want to look at what are my prices right now and what are these prices going to look like in 2014, because if my rates are going to jump significantly, then you're going to want to look at strategies that you can implement this year to either minimize the impact of community rating or at least delay it as long as possible. We don't have a lot of time to get into those strategies right now, but just know that there are options. But this is community rating. This is very important for groups and individuals to understand how this transition rolling into 2014 is going to impact your current prices. And so give that some thought, give that some look, and you can reach back out to Curtis and we can have this conversation for groups that want to discuss that further.
Well, that's what I love about you so much, Lou, is that you are proactive. You're making sure that your clients and other clients that are small businesses, and especially in the dental community, are being proactive and are ready for what's going to happen rather than being retroactive. That is what Procore is all about. We're all about being proactive, making sure that our clients get take advantage of all the tax benefits before the end of the year, that they take advantage of them during the year before they're expired. And so thank you for sharing that portion as well.
Oh, hey, my pleasure. And I appreciate you saying that because I think it's important. It's interesting. I mean, here we're facing the most significant changes to health insurance and health care that we faced in more than a generation. And I would imagine all of you on this webinar in your own respective states, just look at the conversations, the advertising, the information that's out there. You'll find in general there's very little information being shared, and I just think it's crazy that we're not having more conversations earlier. You're definitely in a position as employers and individual families to consider your options and make important decisions now rather than waiting till January and really limiting your options. So I wish we had more time to get into these strategies, but I'm probably going to go over on time as it is, and so just just reach out to Curtis and with questions about strategy, and we definitely can help discuss your situation.
And if you don't have that information, just real quick, jot that down. It's Curtis at procorecpa.com. That's CURTIS at procorecpa.com. And my cell phone number, you can call me anytime, is 801-380-7070, and we will say that again at the end of the webinar. But thanks, Lou, and keep going. We definitely have more information to go over.
Perfect. Let me shift gears in and talk about these subsidies that will be available next year. Again, we're still talking about the individual mandate, and remember, if I have to carry insurance, I need to be able to get insurance, and so we become guaranteed issue, community rated, but I also need to be able to afford insurance. If the federal government says, hey, Lou, you've got to carry insurance starting next year, and I say, well, what if I can't afford it? What if I don't have enough money to pay that premium? Well, starting January of next year, the federal government is going to offer significant tax credits and subsidies to help individuals purchase health insurance plans. And I'm going to talk about this in more detail here in the next few minutes, but the ability to take advantage of these subsidies really centers around these health insurance exchanges. I'm sure all of you have heard all kinds of information in the media regarding these health insurance exchanges. The federal government's now trying to rebrand them as marketplaces. just because exchanges have such a negative connotation. But let me talk for just a few minutes about what a health insurance exchange is. These health insurance exchanges, they really are at the center of managing this individual mandate. Now, first of all, it's important to understand that a health insurance exchange, it's not an insurance company. And so right now in your state, you might be insured by United Healthcare, or you might be insured by local Blue Cross or the local Blue Shield. You're still going to deal with these insurance companies just like you deal with them right now. But in exchange, it's nothing more than really a virtual marketplace where you can shop and look at all these insurance companies. So it's kind of like if you're, for example, I'm from the state of Maine, and I just purchased some plane tickets to go back to Maine. And so where did I go? I went to Travelocity. And I start looking on Travelocity at all the different airlines, Delta, JetBlue, Southwest, and seeing what they offer, and who makes me pay for luggage, and who flies into Maine versus Boston, and I compare all the features of these different airlines in Travelocity. Health insurance exchanges are just like that. An exchange is nothing more than a marketplace where all these insurance companies that want to get your business are going to be there. And so you can go to this exchange and you can shop around for insurance. Now, you don't have to buy your health insurance next year through an exchange. You can still go directly to United Healthcare or Blue Cross or whoever and still buy insurance directly from them. But there are some significant reasons why these exchanges will turn your head, so to speak, and why you're going to want to look at these exchanges pretty heavily. And let me just touch on, when we talk about exchanges, there's two major exchanges that the federal government is requiring states to set up. There's an individual exchange, and there's a shop exchange, which is a small business exchange. Now, the federal government has basically said to every state in the country, you need to set up these exchanges by January of next year. If you don't, we're going to come in as the federal government, and we're going to set them up and manage them for you. So this individual exchange has to be up and running as of January 1st, 2014. Well, technically it has to be ready to roll by October 1st because that's when open enrollment starts. So your state has either decided to set up and run their own exchange, or they've decided to just kind of punt it to the federal government and say, you know what, we don't want to deal with this, you guys deal with it. Or they may be partnering with the federal government and doing some kind of joint approach. Utah has kind of entered into somewhat of a joint approach with this individual exchange. Now, the small business exchange originally was scheduled to be implemented January of this next year as well, but many of you have probably heard that this piece of the legislation, if you're going to use the federal small business exchange, it's been delayed until January of 2015. So if you're in a state that is rolling out its own small business exchange on a state level, chances are you're going to go into effect January of next year. If you're in a state that basically says, hey, we don't want to deal with this, we're going to let the federal government do it, that's been delayed until January of 2015. So you're just going to want to check locally what's happening with your small business exchange. Here in Utah had kind of an exchange experiment going on for a few years, so they were a bit ahead of the curve. So Utah is actually rolling out the small business exchange on a local state level as of January 1st of next year.
So
now,
Lou,
the reason these yes?
Lou, so I've heard and been reading that Obamacare, this health reform, is being pushed back another year for businesses. What that's been saying is that the exchange has been pushed back a year. As far as everything else, it's going to be staying the same. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, for the most part. So exchanges, if your state's going to use the federal exchange, the ability to use the exchange as a health plan option for your business has been pushed off for a year. The recent announcement in terms of delaying the implementation of this act has to do with potential employer penalties and certain employer reporting requirements. So if you're a large employer potentially subject to penalties for not offering insurance, that's all been pushed off till 2015, and we're going to come to that and talk about that in a minute. But I would imagine for most of you on the call, you're really kind of getting into that. You're kind of in a different pool there. Most of you probably have less than 50 full-time employees, but if you are a large employer subject to penalties, Those potential penalty situations have been pushed off till 2015. But with the exchange, you may have a small business exchange going into effect January of 2014. It just depends on your state and if they're going to run it on a local level or if they're going to defer to the federal government. But that's a good question, Curtis, and I'll hit that again as we get through some of this individual stuff. And you'll see as we move through and finish this individual conversation that the impact of these individual actions really impact your decisions as an employer, and so that's why I'm kind of hitting this first. But there are very specific reasons why these exchanges are so critical to this reform effort moving forward. So for example, you'll notice on the screen, the individual exchange, if you want help with your premium, if you want a tax credit, or if you want to get subsidies to help you cover your out-of-pocket expense, you can only qualify for that financial assistance if you buy your individual health plan through the individual exchange. That's a big deal. If you, as a small employer, want to take advantage of things like the small business tax credit, or if you want some more flexibility in terms of your employer contribution requirements, and that depends on just kind of what your state sets up for these employer requirements, or if you're really looking to roll out some kind of defined contribution model, there's some specific reasons why a small business exchange might make a lot of sense for you. Now, you're going to see as well some other private exchanges roll onto the marketplace. I'll be really honest with you. I'm trying to figure out the real benefit to these other private exchanges. I think time will tell whether they're priced a little better or they have different insurance companies participating or whatnot. We'll see. You might be getting solicitations and advertisements in your state from co-ops and private exchanges. There's a lot of little programs that are probably going to pop up over the next couple years, and these are all just sort of in addition to these federally required exchanges. These are the two main exchanges, this individual marketplace and the small business marketplace. And again, as an employer, it's important for you to start looking at the impact of these options on your company and also on your individual employees. It's important to start looking at that now. Within the next month, we're going to know what the rates look like in 2014. And so you can start having these conversations now and seeing the impact of these programs on what you're currently doing or what your individual employees are currently taking advantage of. So again, you don't want to wait until January to try to figure this out. You really want to spend the third quarter of this year getting educated and figuring out what's the best course of action for my company, or what's the best thing to help my employees do to help them save money and get the best coverage possible, and figure that out by the end of September. So you've got the fourth quarter, you've got these open enrollment windows to take advantage and implement. So just a thought there. So let me talk real quickly. This is some interesting information. I want to talk about this individual health exchange because I'm confident for this audience, for dental practices, that many of your employees are going to look heavily at these individual exchanges because, again, unless I'm wrong, I think most of you don't currently offer health insurance, and you probably won't offer it going into next year. And so Curtis in his office can be a real resource to all of your individuals to help them take a look at how do I navigate this individual exchange and take advantage of more affordable health insurance options. In many cases, many of your individual employees might have their premiums subsidized 100%, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But let me just mention this individual exchange is important because it really fulfills three major roles. And I title these roles traffic control, quality control, and cost control. Let me talk about traffic control just for a minute. Remember, if I'm going to go get insurance and I want a subsidy, I have to go to this individual exchange. The first thing this exchange does when I apply for coverage is it determines if I'm eligible for other government programs like Medicaid or CHIP or Medicare. And if I am, it automatically sends me over to those respective agencies to take advantage of those benefits. If I am eligible for government programs, I am ineligible for premium subsidies. And so the first thing the exchange does is manage enrollment. And if you're eligible for Medicaid, then for most states, you're just automatically enrolled in Medicaid. So think about that for a minute. If you wonder why, you know, when you see all these states across the country that have pushed back so hard when it comes to implementing the Affordable Care Act, a lot of it has to do with this traffic control piece of the individual exchange. So if everybody has to carry insurance and they want to get subsidies, all these people are going to run to the individual exchange and apply for coverage. But if they're eligible for Medicaid, they're going to be automatically enrolled on Medicaid. So look at Utah, for example. Utah has 70,000 citizens that are currently eligible for Medicaid but not enrolled. So what do you think is going to happen next year when these 70,000 people go to the individual exchange and get pushed directly on to Medicaid, excuse me. That's going to have a huge financial impact on the state of Utah's budget. Now, in addition to that, you remember a couple years ago, or last year, I guess, when there was the Supreme Court challenge to the Affordable Care Act. One of those challenges was the requirement that the federal government set for states to expand Medicaid eligibility from 100% of the federal poverty level to 133% of the federal poverty level. Now, the Supreme Court came back and said, no, you can't do that. You can't make states expand Medicaid eligibility and hold their matching funds hostage, but you can give states the choice. So most states across the country are still trying to figure out, in addition to this existing liability, do we also want to expand Medicaid so people with higher incomes can still qualify? Utah, in this state, still hasn't made a decision. In fact, I was in a meeting this morning with the insurance commissioner and some of the individuals from the governor's office, and they still haven't made a decision. I would imagine that your state is similar, but it may not be. Maybe Utah is just the last one to figure this out. But my point is this traffic control piece is very, very important. The exchange is going to manage who's eligible for the subsidies and throw people into government programs if they're eligible. If you're not eligible for government programs, then you'll continue to move through the process and look at that premium subsidy. Now, it's important to understand, too, that these exchanges and health insurance in general will now be subject to open enrollment windows moving forward. Because health insurance is now guaranteed issue, you got to buy health insurance at specific times during the year. Otherwise, you could just wait until you get sick and then go buy a policy, and it would create havoc for these insurance companies. So you'll notice the first open enrollment for the individual exchange is beginning October 1st of this year, and it actually extends through the end of March of next year. And so if you finish enrolling in a health plan through the exchange by December 15th, your coverage will go effective as of January 1st. If you start this process after January, whenever you finish enrolling, you'll go effective the first of the month following your application date.
Lou, I've got
Was there a question?
Yeah, I've got two questions actually for you. First off, I know we spoke about this in the past, and if you're going to be mentioning this in the future, then we can skip it. But now, if an employer, if your employer does offer health care and the employee chooses not to participate, then if they go to an exchange, they will not qualify for tax subsidies. Is that right or is that wrong? There's something along those lines.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Curtis. If in terms of eligibility, and again I'm gonna hit that in a minute, and we'll see that again. But in terms of qualifying for a premium subsidy, if you're eligible for employer-sponsored coverage that meets certain guidelines, you are ineligible for a premium subsidy in the individual exchange. And so that's, yeah, you're right on, and we'll talk about that some more in just a second.
Great. So the follow-up is along the same issue which you're talking about right now. And the question is along enrollment. If the Act calls for a guaranteed issues policy, why does it appear the exchange's limited enrolling period? If it's a guaranteed issue, why is there such a limit?
You know, that's a good question. The concern is it's kind of like current small employer plans. You know, if your dental practice currently offers a group health plan, you have an open enrollment window for your new hires to come on the plan. So they can't just come on the plan at any time, because if they did, they would just wait until they got sick, and then they would buy health insurance, have their claims paid, and then drop the insurance again. and this adverse selection would put every insurance company out of business, because all health insurance starting next year is guaranteed issue. So if I want health insurance, I can get it. I might be in the middle of cancer treatment, I might be a diabetic, I might need a kidney transplant, but if I want health insurance, I can get it. But if I'm able to just buy health insurance anytime I want to, go get my medical conditions treated, and then drop it, there's no consistency of premium payments. The insurance companies would all go out of business. So because we've moved to this guaranteed issue model, there has to be a way of ensuring that, insurance companies are protected. Otherwise, people would just drop and pick up health insurance only when they needed it, and it would put every insurance company out of business. So that's the rationale behind it.
Beautiful, thanks. And I hope, Paula, I hope that helps out you with your question. But yeah, please continue, and looking forward to hearing more this other stuff you got coming up.
Perfect, thank you. And so you'll notice, so open enrollment's a big deal, and it won't just apply to buying insurance through this individual exchange. It will also apply if you just continue to buy your health plan in the private market. You will be subject to open enrollment limitations. Now, once we get past 2014, open enrollment, it's basically the fourth quarter of every year, so October 15th to December 7th with January 1st effective dates. So bottom line, traffic control, if you want a subsidy, you go to the exchange, they start sort of managing everybody who's in line and either moving them forward to qualify for a premium subsidy, or they're going to send them to Medicaid or Medicare or whatnot. The second role of the individual exchange is what I call quality control. Every qualified health plan in an exchange has to be given what we call an actuarial value. And so you'll notice that there's 4 different categories of health plans that are available within the individual exchange: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. And there's a corresponding actuarial value: 60%, 70%, 80%, and 90%. Actuarial value, to be honest with you, it doesn't really mean that much. It really is a measure of a plan's generosity. How rich is the benefit? And so it doesn't mean all the plans are the same. So for example, in this silver category, there may be 100 different health plans that all have an actuarial value of 70%. Now, one health plan might have a $1,000 deductible with a $3,000 out-of-pocket max, but you have to meet your deductible for everything. Another health plan might have a $2,000 deductible, but provide you a copay when you go to the doctor and maybe a prescription card. And so you can see, to determine a plan's actuarial value, different components of the health plan are measured. So we look at deductible, out-of-pocket maximum, doctor copay, prescription card, ER, maternity coverage. So all these benefits are measured, and they're put into this calculator, and it spits out an actuarial value. And so anything that's in this between 70 and 80% will be categorized as a silver plan. So please keep that in mind. Just because you have a health plan that's a bronze plan, it doesn't mean that all 50 plans in there are going to be exactly the same. It's a general overall measure of how rich the benefit is. And so you can kind of tell intuitively a 60% valued plan is not going to cover near as much as a 90% valued plan. And there are reasons why plans are grouped into these 4 categories, which I'll talk about in a minute. But that's the second major role of these individual exchanges, is they are going to basically manage and approve these health plans and drop them in these categories. Now let's get into some fun stuff, because this will be really impactful for your people. These premium subsidies. So we have traffic control, quality control, cost control. If I have to buy insurance, can I get help paying for my premium? And people, this is a big deal. These premium subsidies are extremely generous, and you're going to see that as we go through this calculation. So who qualifies for a premium subsidy? Well, first of all, they have to pay taxes, because the premium subsidy is administered through an individual's tax return. So if you don't file taxes, don't bother. You have to go through the individual exchange. I've mentioned that already. You can only capture a premium subsidy or a cost-sharing subsidy if you buy your health plan through this individual health insurance exchange. Your household income has to be between 100% and 400% of the federal poverty level. So I hope everybody heard that. That's huge. You can earn up to 400% of the federal poverty level before you phase out of a premium subsidy. 400%. So think about that. In Utah, and most states, I think most states in the country are the same as Utah. In 2014, if you have a family of 4, you can earn up to $95,000 of adjusted gross income before you phase out of a premium subsidy. A family of 7, I say a family of 7 because Utah, we have big families here. A family of 7 is kind of common. You can earn up to almost $140,000 in annual and adjusted gross income before you phase out of a premium subsidy. Qualify for a premium subsidy if your income falls between this range. And I'm going to talk about this some more in a second as well. And then if you want to qualify for a premium subsidy, you can't be eligible for other coverage elsewhere. And so, Curtis, back to your question, if an employee is eligible for a health plan offered by his employer, as long as that health plan meets certain guidelines in terms of affordability and adequacy, then that employee cannot get a premium subsidy if they go to the individual exchange. This is also a really big deal. If you're going to find, I think, in your dental practice that you're going to have a few key people, like the dentist, that make too much money to qualify for a premium subsidy. You're going to find that many of your other employees, younger employees, they're kind of starting out on the income scale, they're going to qualify for a significant premium subsidy. But there's a real issue between eligibility in a small employer health plan and ineligibility to qualify for a premium subsidy. Now, with that said, there are strategies that you can implement as an employer to help you satisfy the needs of these two extremely different demographics. And so if you've got a number of employees that say, listen, I still want the pre-tax benefits of a group plan, but I've got a handful of my employees that could get extremely generous subsidies in the individual exchange, how do I resolve this conflict? And you know what? You absolutely can. There's some terrific strategies that you can implement to circumvent these limitations. And again, there's not enough time in this webinar. We're going to be way over time already. But just please know, reach out to Curtis and ask that question, because as you look at your group, I am confident in a dental practice, there's huge disparities between age and income between the dentist and some of the key employees and some of your regular employees, that you churn through on a regular basis, some of these younger girls and whatnot. And you're going to have some very specific issues that you're going to have to meet the needs of both demographics. And Curtis, we can definitely help with that. So I'd encourage people to reach out to you for sure. And so, okay, so moving on, that's who qualifies for the premium subsidy. Let me talk real quick about the premium subsidy. So if I have to buy health insurance, and Curtis, I'm looking at the clock, and I know we're almost at 2 o'clock, so just give me a heads up. If I need to start speeding this up, I'm sorry, I'm taking too much time, so just let me know if I need to start talking faster, okay?
Absolutely. If everybody else has, if everybody else is fine on time, please raise your hand. But I think we should be fine if you go 10, 15 more minutes. Should be just fine.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, everybody, for being patient with me. It's just a lot of information to go through, and if we still have a lot of questions, we could do this again for sure. But let me talk about this actual premium subsidy, this tax credit. So, for example, let me just kind of put it in perspective. If I go to the individual exchange and I qualify for this subsidy to help me pay my health insurance premium, let's say the health insurance plan that I'm buying costs, let's say it costs $1,000 a month. And then the federal government says, well, we're going to help subsidize that for you. We're going to subsidize that to the tune of $700 a month. Well, how does that work? Well, first of all, this premium subsidy, it's really a tax credit. This tax credit is, first of all, it's an advanceable tax credit. So that means when I qualify for this subsidy, for this tax credit, the federal government will say, well, Lou, you can either wait till the end of the year and we'll just send you this tax credit as a tax refund when you file your taxes, or we can advance it to you. And so, or we can advance it to the insurance company. And this is what I think most people are going to do. So if my premium's $1,000, but the federal government's going to subsidize that to the tune of $700 a month, I'm only responsible to pay my insurance company a premium of $300 a month. The other $700 is going to be paid directly by the federal government, directly to my health plan. And so it doesn't come to me, it goes right to the insurance company to cover my premium. So it's an advanceable tax credit. I do not have to wait to the end of the year to benefit from it. It's also a refundable tax credit, meaning I don't have to have a tax liability to qualify for the credit. So if I get to the end of the year and I just didn't make that much money, and once I figure out my adjusted gross income, let's say I don't owe any federal taxes, or let's say I even qualify for a refund, that does not impact my tax credit for my health plan. It's still paid. I don't have to have a liability. However, there is this reconciliation that you're going to want to be aware of. When the bill was originally passed, there were limits on how much a family might have to pay back if they underestimated what their income was going to be. Long story short, over the last few years, most of those limits have been removed. So, because think about this, you qualify for the credit based on your most recent filed tax return. So when you apply for this premium credit for 2014, you're going to be using your tax return from 2012 that you filed by April of 2013. And so you're going to be estimating your income for 2014. When you get to the end of 2014, and you actually file your taxes for 2014, if you estimated wrong, you could either qualify for a larger credit, and that would just come to you in the form of a tax refund, or you could owe money back to the federal government. So there is a reconciliation process you're going to want to be aware of. But in terms of the impact of this tax credit on your individual families, it's immediate. It can immediately, starting in January, reduce your out-of-pocket expense for health insurance premiums. So let's talk about qualifying, calculating your credit. How does this work? And I'm going to go through this real quick. You're probably going to have a lot of questions when I'm done here, but let me just give you a feel for just the generosity of the credit. So first of all, determining the first step you have to take is determine where does my household fall in terms of our income relative to the federal poverty level. And so where my family's income falls on this federal poverty level scale depends on, number one, the size of my family, so how many people in my family, me, my wife, and 3 kids, and then how much annual income my household generates. So you'll notice that a family of 4 at 100% of the federal poverty level, now this is 2011, just so you know. And so this will change a bit in 2014, but when we did this presentation, I couldn't find the grid for 2014, so forgive me, it's a little outdated. But for 2011 numbers, at 100% of the federal poverty level, a family of 4 could earn a little over $22,000. At 400%, a family of 4 could earn a little over $89,000. In 2014, that's about $95,000. So the first thing you want to calculate is, where do I fall on this relative to the federal poverty level? And if my household income is less than 100% of the federal poverty level, then I'm just going to enroll on Medicaid. If it's greater than 400%, then I'm not eligible for a premium subsidy at all. If it's between 100 and 400%, then I'm going to be eligible for some kind of a tax credit, some kind of a premium subsidy from the federal government. And here's how you figure it out. It's either the cost of the health plan that I'm buying. So when you finish calculating the credit, you can't make money off the credit. So if the health plan you buy is cheaper than your credit, the most you can get is the premium that the health plan charges. Or the credit is the excess resulting from this formula. You look at what your premium would be for your family for the second lowest cost silver plan in the individual exchange. Remember, we talked about that. The quality control for the individual exchange, they categorize these health plans. So all the health plans that are categorized as a silver plan, you take the second lowest cost silver plan in the exchange in your area, and you subtract from that the percentage of the federal government. Depending on where you fall in the federal poverty level, there's a maximum percentage of your income that you can pay towards health insurance premiums. So you take that percentage, times it by your household income, and you come up with a number, and you subtract that from the second lowest cost silver plan. Does everybody get that? Probably not. I had to do this about 20 times to figure this out. So let me give you an idea. So you can see on this grid here, depending on my family size, you can see if you look at your household income, you can see where, and again, your household income and where you fall relative to the federal poverty level is a function of how many people in your family and how much money you make. But let's say when you do that calculation, you're at 200% of the federal poverty level. And so that means, based on the federal government's guidelines, you can pay, the most you can pay towards a premium is 6.3% of your household income. And so at 200% of the federal poverty level for a family of four, that's $2,700 a year. So that's the most that you'd be required to pay towards health insurance. And then here's what you do. Let's say the annual cost of the second lowest cost silver plan in your market is $12,500. You take that and you subtract from it. See here at the 200% of the federal poverty level, the most that you're required to pay is $2,952. So you subtract the two. The annual cost of the premium minus the maximum amount that the federal government says you're required to pay towards your health insurance plan, and that number is your subsidy. So you can see on this slide here in this example, if the silver plan costs $12,500 a year and I'm at 200% of the federal poverty level, that means my income was $46,850. At 6.3% of that income is $2,952. So subtracted from the silver plan gives me $9,179. That number right there is my subsidy. And then I can use that subsidy to buy whatever individual health plan I want. So if I go up to an 80% plan or a 90% plan that costs more, then I pay the difference. If I want to go down to that health insurance premium completely subsidized by this $91.79 and pay nothing out of my pocket. Anyway, that's how the subsidy is calculated. I realize it takes a little bit of practice to figure it out. I'm telling you, I kind of went through this in my mind over and over. So just know that there are simple calculators out there. In fact, my office in the next few weeks, once we know what the cost of the silver plans are, we can even send you our calculator, and you can do the calculation real simply for your people. There's estimates out there right now. You can find subsidy calculators online, but the 2014 rates for your area probably have not been released yet. So they're just working off of somewhat of an estimate. But you'll be able to figure this out pretty soon. You don't have to do it longhand like that. But anyway, but that's how the subsidy is calculated. But the point that I wanted to drive home with this subsidy is you're going to find that many, if not most, of your employees will qualify financially for a fairly significant subsidy. I feel pretty strongly that that's going to be the case. And so I think you're going to want to start looking at that in the months of August and September so that your individual employees can be in a position to start going through that open enrollment process in October and taking advantage of those subsidies that are available to them. So I would keep that in mind, and definitely Curtis's office can be a real resource there as your employees have questions about their applicable household income and who qualifies in terms of family members and household size, and what pieces of my income do I include in the calculation? Do I include alimony? Do I include disability benefits? There's probably a lot of questions that your employees are going to have, just reach out to Curtis, and we can definitely be a resource to help with that. Did you have anything along those lines you wanted to add, Curtis?
No, that's been great. And if you guys do want any of Lou's information and his expertise to help you in your office, we can either do a conference call with him individually, or we can get you connected with his office. He is a great resource for small businesses, and really appreciate the information.
So thank you, Curtis. Let me just finish real quick. I'm going to spend 5 minutes on a couple of other topics. Okay, maybe 10, and we'll be done. Now, I want to just mention real quick, certain individuals will also qualify for cost-sharing subsidies, coverage with meeting their deductibles and co-payments and whatnot. I'm not going to get into that right now, but that's also another benefit that your employees might be able to take advantage of. I'm going to skip. Let me do this because we're out of time. The Small Business Exchange definitely has some features that you're going to want to consider. It's not mandatory in your state that you even look at the Small Business Exchange. In fact, for many states, you're probably not even going to have it until 2015. But if you have questions about the Small Business Exchange in your state and why, as an employer, you'd want to look at the Small Business Exchange, reach out to Curtis, and we can talk to you about that. I'm sorry for glossing over this, but we really are out of time, and I want to talk specifically about potential employer penalties. This is probably what all of you have been waiting for, and forgive me for the build-up to this, but I think you'll see that figuring out these penalties, it's important to understand everything that your individuals are facing as we approach next year, because as you look at potential penalties for next year, it's important to understand that, number one, there is no obligation for employers to offer health insurance starting next year. But if you are a large employer, and a large employer means an employer with more than 50 full-time equivalent employees in the preceding calendar year, then you could be subject to a penalty. Now, let me mention first and foremost, this was scheduled to go into effect January of 2014. Curtis alluded to this earlier. The federal government just recently announced that this provision of the act is being delayed until 2015. And so if you are a large employer and you don't offer health insurance, you don't face any penalties next year. So you've got another year to kind of figure it out. So just keep that in mind. We haven't had a chance to update this slide yet, but this provision has been delayed a year. But this is important to point out. If you're on the bubble, 50 full-time equivalent employees in the preceding calendar year, so 2014, are you a large employer? It's based on your employment activity now in 2013. So as you look at your workforce, if you're on the bubble, if you're close to crossing this threshold, you have plenty of time to implement creative changes in your workforce to keep you below 50 full-time employees. How do you calculate whether or not you are a large employer? Well, you've got full-time employees. If you have full-time employees, anybody that works over 30 hours a week, they're considered a full-time employee. They're just given a value of 1. And then you want to figure your part-time employees, and I would imagine as dental offices, you have a lot of people working less than 30 hours a week. You're going to add up all those individuals' hours, their monthly hours, and divide by 120. And that will give you a full-time equivalency value. You probably don't have a lot of seasonal employees, and you probably don't use temp agencies, so that's probably not an issue for you. Mainly, you're going to add up all your full-time people, and then you're going to do this calculation for your part-time people. And you do this every month of the year, and then you average the totals for every month of the year to determine if for the year you were a large employer. So when you add up, so let's say you had 20 full-time employees and 15 full-time equivalents, you add the two together, and that puts you at 35. So you're below 50. So you are not a large employer. You are not subject to any potential penalties whatsoever. I would imagine that most of your offices, when you do this calculation, you're going to be below 50 full-time equivalents. And if you're below 50 full-time equivalents, you'll notice that you face no potential penalties whatsoever. You have no obligation to offer insurance, and you're not penalized if you don't. Now, if you are a large employer, it's important to understand something with regard to this penalty. Let's say as a company you have a lot of part-time people and a lot of full-time people, and you do breach this threshold, and you could face a penalty. First of all, it's important to understand that even though we use your part-time people in the calculation to determine if you're a large employer, if you are a large employer, you're only penalized on your full-time employees. And it's important to understand that if you're penalized, it's not because you didn't offer insurance, and it's not because your employees went and got it somewhere else. You are only penalized if one of your employees goes to the individual exchange and receives a premium tax credit. Then that triggers the penalty. So if you're a large employer and you don't offer insurance, and one of your employees that should have been eligible for your insurance goes to the individual exchange and qualifies for a premium subsidy, it'll trigger a penalty. And the penalty is $2,000 annually for each one of your full-time people, but you get your first 30 full-time people for free. So there's a couple things that are really important in this paragraph. Number one is you're only penalized on your full-time people. So if you have 100 part-time people that are making you a large employer, you do not face any potential penalties on part-time employees working less than 30 hours a week, and you get your full-time employees, the first 30 of them, you get for free. And so if you have less than 30 full-time employees, you will never be subject to a penalty. But if you are, let's say you have 35 full-time employees and 100 part-time people, so you're a large employer, you don't offer health insurance, one of your full-time people goes and gets a subsidy, well then if you only have 35 full-time people, you get your first 30 for free. Your penalty is only on 5 people times $2,000 annually. It's a $10,000 penalty. That's how you would figure it out. So it's important to understand that if you are a larger dental practice that could be subject to a penalty, if you can manage your workforce so you have less than 30 full-time employees and you employ more part-time employees, then you minimize or completely eliminate any potential liability for a penalty. And this comes back to Curtis's comment earlier in the seminar that some of these large companies like Home Depot and Applebee's and whatnot, they're moving a lot of their workforce to less than 30 hours a week so that they minimize this potential penalty. And so you could implement the same kind of strategy. I hope that makes sense. If you still have questions about the penalty, definitely reach out to Curtis. That's the penalty if you don't offer health insurance. If you are a large employer and you do offer health insurance, then just keep in mind your health insurance has to pass 2 tests so that you avoid paying a penalty. You could, as a large employer, still face a penalty if you offer a health plan but it's too expensive or it's not adequate. So from an affordability standpoint, you have to pay enough of the single rate of your health plan so that your employee's portion of the premium is no more than 9.5% of their W-2 income, and your health plan has to have an actuarial value of at least 60%. Listen, people, it's hard to fail these 2 tests. If you are offering a health plan, you have to work really hard to fail these 2 tests. So it's usually not an issue. But if there are some of you out there who are a large employer and you offer health insurance, just know that as long as you meet these 2 tests when it comes to your health plan, you are not at risk of paying a penalty. Even if your employees decline the health insurance and try to go get it somewhere else, you still aren't at risk because you satisfied the test. Now, if you fail the test, then anybody who goes and gets a premium credit who would have been eligible for your health plan, it's a $3,000 annual penalty, but it's only applied to those who went and got the credit. Remember, if you don't offer health insurance, and even if just one person goes and gets a premium credit, you pay a $2,000 penalty for everybody you should have offered health insurance to, even if only one person gets the credit. But remember, you get your first 30 people for free. In this scenario, you only pay a penalty for those who actually went and got a premium credit, but it's $3,000 a year. But again, remember, it can never be, the penalty in this scenario can never be higher than what you would have paid if you didn't offer health insurance. And so if you have less than 30 full-time employees, again, you wouldn't be subject to a penalty Anyway, that's a quick review of potential penalties. You probably have a lot of questions. Just, again, reach out to Curtis, and we'd be happy to look at your current situation. These last few slides talk about managing full-time employment status. If you have a lot of seasonal turnover and you're worried about managing who's eligible as a full-time employee, we can implement some strategies to help you with that. I'm not going to go through all that right now. I don't think it's really going to apply to many people here. And so in a nutshell, please keep in mind for your dental practice, I would imagine that almost everybody on this call has less than 50 full-time equivalents. You do not face any obligations to offer health insurance. You do not face any penalties, but you can be a great resource to your people to help them understand these individual exchanges, take advantage of these premium subsidies. You can meet this need of your employees. I think many of your employees, you can help them meet their needs in these individual exchange and not create a financial burden for your dental practice. And at the same time, we can still help some of your highly compensated people like the dentist take advantage of pre-tax benefits through the company. It's some creative strategy, but we definitely can do it. And so keep that in mind as you're looking at options. Reach out to Curtis, and we can help be a resource to you. With that said, thank you for your time. Curtis, I'm going to throw this back to you.
Yeah, I've actually got one last thing for you. Number one is thanks everybody for being on today, but you've given us some really good insight and some real comforting news for, like you said, most of dental practice throughout the United States, that there will not be penalties. But there are a lot of options for these dental practices. As the expert, what would you suggest we do starting from right now until 2014, 2015? Would it be just to educate our employees on the options that they have, or what would be your suggestion for us to go out and do today?
Well, I'll tell you what we're doing with the companies we work with here in Utah. We work with hundreds of companies, mostly in Utah. I mean, we work with companies across the country, but we have a lot of business right here in our local market. And what we're doing with these companies right now is gathering some information. Now, I realize some of this is somewhat sensitive, but we're trying to be a resource to these families. So we're looking at, first and foremost, if you currently offer a group health insurance plan, then we're taking that information and we're comparing that to some of their options as we approach the end of the year. I think there's 4 major options you want to consider as an employer, and this is whether or not you offer health insurance coverage right now or if you don't. You want to look at, number one, what are the prices going to be like in 2014, and how does that compare to what we're paying right now? Because if 2014 pricing is better in your state than what you're paying right now, you're going to want to start moving ahead to prepare for an insurance plan change effective January 1st. Why not take advantage of better pricing as soon as possible? You need to understand, and this is a common misconception, that most people think with their individual policy or with their small employer health plan that they are contractually obligated to stay on those health plans for a 12-month period. And it generally, in every state, is just not the case. You can cancel your health plan with notice at any time. And so as you look forward to January, if community rating is a better position for you to be in starting next year, then you'll want to make some changes as of January 1st to take advantage of better pricing. If community rating is not going to be, if it's going to put you in a worse situation, you're going to want to either renew your insurance plan at the end of December to delay the impact of community rating as long as possible, or perhaps consider other options. And there are some other options to look at. It's a lot to get into right now, but if you have questions about what does that mean, other options, reach out to Curtis and we can help discuss that with you in your specific state. In addition to that, I think employers will want to look at what the options will be with the small business exchange beginning January of 2014, if that's an option for them. And I also think we need to start looking at what the pricing and subsidies are going to look like for your individuals beginning 2014. So to answer your question, Curtis, what we're having our groups do right now is we're compiling some of the data on their individual employees. We're looking at things like what their current health insurance premiums are, and then we're gathering household income and family size from them so we can help run this analysis and help compare to what they're doing right now. So keep in mind, if you offer a group health plan or if you're just encouraging your people to go buy their own individual policies, you can start doing this analysis within the next 30 to 60 days to start getting a feel for how do your current decisions and your current prices, how are they going to change as you roll into January, and calculating those tax credits, those individual tax credits, and looking at the impact of community rating beginning next year. I would say those are probably the two most pressing actionable items over the next couple months.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, Lou. I know your time is busy, and because of time, I've got a few questions here that I'll reach out to each of you individually. Please, if you have additional questions, email me at curtis@procorecpa.com. That's C-U-R-T-I-S @procorecpa.com, or you can always text or call me on my cell, which is 801-380-7070. Thanks everybody for joining Procore. This is brought to you by Procore CPA firm, the #1 firm for dentists. We do get our dentists in a better financial position, whether it's with Obamacare, whether it's with tax planning, CFO services, or any way to get them in a better financial position. So with that, we hope everyone has a great day. And Lou, tell your team thank you for letting you come on today. We really appreciate your knowledge and your information. And is it okay if we get your slideshow to hand out to a few of these individuals?
Absolutely. I'll make sure to forward that on to you, and you can send it out. How's that sound?
Sounds great. Does that sound good to everybody else? Fantastic. Well, we'll make sure to send that out to you. Until next time, we will have another webinar next month on our webinar series. Please join. We look forward to seeing you. And until next time, have a great day. Thanks, Lou.
Hey, thank you. Goodbye.